Oh, welcome to Chuck, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. You caught me when I was eating my chocolate piece, man. You gotta give me a second, bro. But I did go back and find, one of the games that we played out of the Superbet Poland Rapid and Blitz, and that is Jan-Krzysztof Duda versus Wesley. So, and this is taken out of round 24. So, as always, my people coming from the Philippines, I would say mabuhay. Almasal tayo. You see me eating a little something, but it's not breakfast time. Let me see. Kamusta na? Aking mga kaibigan. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Anybody who is coming from Poland, I know I don't say this correctly. I gotta brush up on my Polish, but I will say Cześć and Dziękuję. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we got for this game, homie. All right, so we got the move E4, E5, knight to F3. We got knight to C6, bishop to B5. You are going to see a lot of games go this way. Sometimes people will, try to avoid all of that by going bishop to C4. So anyway, we do see knight to F6, and we have the Berlin defense. And for those of you that are aware of, the game of chess and E4 openings, this is a very huge way for black to try to basically give white nothing. And that's what you're trying to do anyway. You're trying to give your opponent nothing. Like, why give them something, right? So we got D3. We got bishop to C5. Bishop takes C6. Pawn takes C6 to D pawn. You almost never, probably Magnus Carlsen will do it, but you hardly never see the B pawn take on D6, on C6. It just really creates too much damage. And really the only thing you can do is kind of like maybe go bishop to A6. But, I mean, the bishop is not very good on this diagonal. We got castles by white. Queen comes down to D6. We got C3. Bishop to G4. And then we do see the novelty of the game, which is H3. Which is interesting because H3 makes a lot of sense in this position. Just asking the bishop, what does it want to do? Bishop takes F3. Queen takes F3. We got castles by black. Rook slides over to D1. We kind of had a little bit of a problem with this pawn right here, so you kind of have to defend it, unless you just want to lose a pawn. We got queen to E6. We got the move B4. Now, some of you guys might have noticed that we have opposite side castling. White has castled on the king side and black has castled on the queen side. So we need to start attacking on opposite sides of the board. So that's why you see C3 and B4. You're probably going to see A4, and all these pawns trying to break open this position over here. And you will be probably seeing black trying to do the same thing over there. Bishop goes to E7. We see knight to D2. We got H5 starting to kind of get that little attack rolling. You might see something like H5, G5, G4 trying to break open this position right here. Knight goes to C4. We got G6, A4. So you see that white's, attack is coming pretty quick. So you kind of need to do a little something if you're black. So the knight does go back to D7, trying to defend the queen side a little bit. We do see bishop to E3. King side steps over to B8. When you have castled on the queen side, usually moves like king to B8, king to B1 are not, are pretty protective. So, I mean, consider those. We do see the move B5, and we come to the point of the thumbnail. White is like, bro, I want to rip this position open, get this rook over here, and then so your king can be pretty sad. So we do see knight to B6. Pawn takes C6, knight takes C4, pawn takes C4. We got the rook takes D1 with check. Rook takes D1. And this has kind of like, lightened things up for black. As you guys can see, oops, I really did that. Let me get back to where I need to be in the game. Bam, right here. Okay. So you see in this position right here, you really don't want these rooks kind of kept on the board simply because, I mean, this rook is going to try to swing over here and you have a lot of firepower going towards your king this way and that pawn as well. So it does definitely give you some breathing room to go rook takes D1, rook takes D1. And then you are just encouraging another trade with rook over to D8. So we do see rook taking d8, bishop taking d8, and we got queen down to d1. As you can see, white actually has a lot of pawns in this particular situation. So, you know, black kind of needs to get rid of some of these pawns on me. So the bishop does come to e7. We see pawn taking b7, king taking b7, and then we have a very, very nice move here. As you guys always hear me say, when you are up material, you know, you really do need to consider trades, just simply because it's going to be getting some of, you know, your opponent's attackers off the board. And of course, if you simplify the position all the way down, you're basically going to get to a point where you just have superior material, and you might be able to kind of press that for a win, unless, of course, it's some draw stuff. We got queen to d5 with check. We see queen taking d5 and then pawn taking d5, and you see that white is not only up a pawn, but they have corrected their damaged pawn structure. And we do have same color bishops, which does draw a little bit less than opposite color bishops. But I mean, it's not like the game is just completely won on white's perspective. They are basically just up the true pawn. So we do see queen over to king to a6. Sorry, there's no queens on the board. Forgive me. We got king over to f1. We see the move f5. And then we do have f3. And something else that I want to mention that's a little bit subtle. It's very relevant in this particular endgame. You know, we do have dark square bishops for both sides of the board. So what both players should be thinking about doing is putting their pawns on opposite colored squares. So you see that white pretty much has already accomplished that. They just kind of need to do something with this pawn here, because it can potentially be a target if they leave it on a dark square. And you don't want to just be spending your time protecting pawns. So pawn takes e4, pawn takes e4. We got king down to a5. We got bishop taking a7, king taking a4. So we have gotten rid of, you know, any outside pass pawns on the queen side. So we're keeping it a little bit, you know, more in. So we got king up to e2, king goes to b5. We got king up to d3. And then we actually have a move that makes the game really, really hard for Wesley So, and that is the move bishop to c5. This move actually kind of surprises me, because you're in a situation where you really don't want to trade the bishops, because, you know, white has a superior, you know, amount of material as far as the pawns are concerned. So this would be something absolutely, if you're black, you want to avoid trades, because it is going to be helping Duda, you know, try to win the game. But that is what we actually see. We got the move c4, throwing in a check first. We got king down to c5, and then bishop taking c5 with check, and then king taking c5. And this is a position where you are completely won if you're white, but you have to be very careful in this particular situation, because there is definitely some ways that you can absolutely go wrong in the position. And a lot of it comes down to like in-game knowledge, but then a lot of it comes down as well to how much tempi each player has. Because if you put yourself in a situation where you have no moves and you have to make like a bad move, you know, you'd be in a Zugzwang, right? So in this position right here, I want you to pause the video. There is an absolute killer move in this position, like by far the best move. But there is also an alternate move. So there's two moves that I'll accept, you know, if you guess either one of those moves. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to guess one of those two moves, go ahead and do so. All right, man. So, you know, if any of you guys saw, you know, were subscribing to me when I first started my chess channel, you guys would know automatically probably the answer to this question. The other one's a little bit harder, but it's not. It doesn't quite bang as much as this first one does. Now, the move that I'm looking for is h4. Now, it seems very, very simple because, I mean, it's just a basic, one of the most basic in-game concepts, and that is when one pawn freezes two pawns. As you can see, this move h4 really kind of like ties down black a lot, because you really don't want to push this pawn here because you would be allowing a runaway pawn. And so it really freezes black in the position they're in. And then you really don't want to push c6. You really don't want to move the king anywhere. You're really forced into a really bad situation. You know, you're in a, you're in a Zugzwang, you know, if you are black. So that is definitely by far the best move. So that is the answer. But I will also accept the move g3. And it basically kind of does a similar situation. It doesn't allow white. So it doesn't allow black. So basically what you want to make sure you do, because in this particular situation, right? Both sides have the ability to play this move. You absolutely under no circumstances want to allow black to play that move to you because it will put you in a bind and you will not be able to win the game. And I will show you exactly what that means. But like I said, if you did play the move G3, you would be preventing this move, so you would not be allowing your pawns to be frozen, right there. So going back, after we see king taking C5, okay, let me see here. You got H4. The one move that I did want to mention, I have like a lot of notes here, right? But the one move that I did really want to mention is the move king to C5. It might seem like, okay, in games, right? You're like, hey, man, like I'm going to try to get the opposition of the opponent, right? But the problem is that does not work at all. And this is what I was telling you guys before. It does allow black to play the move H4. And then the problem is, what do you do in this situation? You cannot move your G pawn. You cannot move the H pawn. There are no other pawns that you can move. So either king move that you make is going to be hurting. By far the best move is going to be king to B3. But this allows black to infiltrate on king to D4. And you can see that you're going to start losing some material. Once black is able to win this pawn, there is not a lot that's stopping this pawn from rolling down the board. So we definitely do not want that to be the situation. So going back, like I said, we did see the move H4. We got king down to B4, and then we have the move G3. So you see that white is constantly having like tempi that they can use to make sure that they put black in a bad situation. We actually see Wesley So go king to A5 in this position. And then we have C5, king goes to B5, and we have C6. And this is a very nice position to be in if you're white, because, black is really kind of tied down to these pawns, because at some point this pawn can push, and then if this pawn moves out of the way, I mean, we're queening this pawn. But going back in this position, it would be really different if black decided to go back to C5 with their king, because now you can take the opposition, and black is in that Zugzwang position that they don't want to be in, because they really don't have any good moves to make. So going back to what we had in the game, like I said, we did get into this position here. The king went to C5. We saw king to C3. We saw king to B5, and then we saw king to B3. And it is in this position that Wesley So resigns the game. Now, some of you guys might be sitting there thinking, okay, wait a minute. I mean, I know that white's up a pawn, but I mean, I don't really understand in this position, like, why is it one for white? Like, well, I don't understand, right? Okay, that's a perfect question, because you really have two options if you're black. Of course, like I said, you really don't want to push the pawn because you're going to be looking at a runaway pawn, and this king is way too far away. You don't want to be leaving the vicinity of this area. You don't want to be leaving the vicinity of this area simply because this pawn is going to push, and then we see this right here. So you have a lot of threats, if you make certain moves as black. So you really kind of have to make a king move, right? So the most logical king moves that you can probably think of are king to C5 or king to A5, right? Because you're like, okay, I want to make sure that the king can't really move. I don't want to give anything, right? But the problem is both of those moves lose. If we go king to A5, you're going to be looking at king to C4, king goes to B6, and then king over to B4. And you can see that white is pushing black back. And if they can get to this square here on C5, they would be doing good because they would be able to support a pawn push and then capturing back and getting other pawns and stuff like that. And then also at the same time, if we did see king going over to C5, like, hey, man, I'm going to try to keep more toward the center of the board, we would be seeing king to A4. King would probably go down to D4, and then there is that pawn push that I was telling you guys about before. So this is not where you want to be at all. So like I said, it is in this position that Wesley So resigns the game, understanding enough about in games, of course, that he's like seeing all this stuff like, yeah, this isn't going to work out for me. So he throws in the towel. So that is that game. Like I said, taking out around 24. I appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat aking makaibigan. Mabuting pagbati to you. And I'll see you guys next time.